What's up, you guys? Welcome to Tim Talk Season 2, where we're here to put therapy in motion again. But as you can see, we're coming live from where the people who do what they love and love what they do live in action at their places of business. And as you can see, we're in an amazing place at a gym. I'm your host, Daniel Brooks, owner and creator of Good Counsel LLC, where we're here to make healing possible. Be sure to visit us at wearegoodcounsel.com to learn more. Tonight, we have a special guest, an awesome place. We're here with Gabriel Villarreal, owner and creator of Lost Boys Strength and Conditioning here in Roanoke, Virginia, as well as Roanoke ADHD of the Valley here in Roanoke, where he mixes mental health as well as strength and conditioning to make the better person. He also feels that ADHD is a superpower. Well, I can't wait to learn more. We're excited. I can't wait to hear from him. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Well. Thanks for coming on. How you been?
Been well.
Yeah.
Can't complain.
Yeah. No, it's definitely been a whirlwind. It's been different in the last few months, but as we were talking before, it's a good time as ever to capitalize on some new opportunities and things of that nature. So, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. So, I own Lost Boys Strength and Conditioning and ADHD Counseling in the Roanoke Valley. And both of those have been open for about 4 or 5 years each. And I'm a licensed professional counselor. And since being licensed, I've been able to bridge those two fields and two businesses a little bit more firmly. Prior to that, when I was a resident, it was a little bit more loose. But now we're fully together.
I love it. And that's the awesome thing about what we do, especially as a creative in the field, is being able to think outside of the box. Because, you know, as with what you do and with what I do, a lot of the ways we want to help probably didn't exist. So we had to make it happen. So speaking of what you do, let's start with, I guess, how did you get into this line of work? Let's talk about, you know, counseling in the first place. What drew you to the counseling work?
So that's a funny story. In my undergraduate degree, I was a psych major. Can't do anything with a psych degree. So I had a fantastic professor that sat down with me and we brainstormed what I needed to do because I knew I needed to go get a master's. And in talking with her, she was like, "Oh, you want to go be a therapist? You want to be a counselor?"
Wow. And
so I was very fortunate to be put on that path, and it was absolutely the right path for me. Graduate school was fantastic.
Really?
It was. As an ADHDer,
it was. You knew what you
it was the easiest part of my academic career by far.
Wow.
Which is usually not something that no one ever says.
Yeah, no, I wish I had that story.
Yeah, so because ADHDers are really able to focus on the things that interest them, this interested me 100%. And I usually tell the story to my parents. You know, we want to get your kids to a place where they're so hyper-focused on what they enjoy that they can do like I did in graduate school, which was walk into class with a cup of coffee, not take any notes, and just be a sponge in the professor, and then go in a week later and crush the test and move on. And usually when I tell them that, they're a little skeptical, but that's what I did. After some trial and error that first semester, I was like, I'm missing half the stuff, writing notes. And so second semester on, just a cup of coffee.
I wish I could. My master's degree was not like that. For me, it was a bunch of energy drinks and Red Bulls, and a lot of sleepless nights. But that's really awesome to see that with ADHD, it's the common thought that you can't focus until you can find what you want and able to focus on.
Right.
So that's really awesome to kind of think about that. So with ADHD and some of your struggles, you know, growing up, that's where you remember what age you were when you kind of
8. I was diagnosed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We were in. My family just moved to Montreal, Canada, and I don't know if you or your audience knows anything about Canada. The education system is much more rigorous than it is in the United States.
Wow.
And so it was not so much throwing me into the deep end, so much as just the middle of the ocean. So all of those ADHD things immediately surfaced, and it was very apparent that I was that there was not only was it just rigorous, I was just drowning because of my ADHD. And so then we did a bunch of testing, and I was diagnosed. Had lots of tutoring the entire time that I was in Canada. I was tutoring twice a week for hours because it was just that hard, and my ADHD was just that abundant. And then, not to disparage the United States education system, but then I came here and it was fine.
Yeah. You're coming from how rigorous it was, and you wouldn't know if you would have went the other way. That's really cool. So you talk about a little bit before we get deeper into all of your different businesses. You talk about on your website and even in us talking, you talk about ADHD as a superpower.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So the analogy that I always use is Superman.
Yeah.
Superman only has his superpowers because he's under our yellow sun. If he was on Krypton, he'd be under a red sun. And none of the Kryptonians had superpowers on Krypton. They were just like you or I. And so his parents sent him here under a yellow sun because they knew he would have superpowers. And so that's what I tell my ADHDers is if we can find your yellow sun, then you can soar. And so the yellow sun can be anything. The yellow sun, for me in particular, when we talk about hyperfocus, is a cup of coffee at a standing desk, and I can immediately slip into that hyperfocus and work. It might be that the ADHD has to exercise, that they have to move. It might be that they have to have a cup of coffee as well. It just kind of depends on what they need. It also might be music with headphones on in a quiet room. What would look like accommodations in school when we're actually just level the playing field.
Oh, wow. That's really awesome. So with just common myths that I've heard even working in the school system, they shouldn't drink caffeine. They're hyper.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. So the same professor that I told you helped me find counseling recognized that I had ADHD as well. And this is a good story, a little bit of a segue, but it's good for our parents to hear because I was 21 before anyone recognized this. I was bringing in tests and she was constantly saying, what you contribute to class is brilliant. You're very smart, but your tests don't reflect that at all. And so let's go over your tests. Long story short, what she found was because of my ADHD, every question that I got incorrect was because I didn't read C or D. They were all multiple choice.
Wow.
Because I was so impulsive, I would just pick A or B and not read C or D when those were the answers. So everything that I got wrong was either A or B. I had selected A or B. The answer was C or D.
Wow.
And so she was the first person to say, do you drink coffee? At the time I didn't. I was a senior in college, I didn't drink coffee. And she said, I want you to have coffee, and I don't want you to put any sugar in it, and just have a little bit of the coffee. Because what can happen is if you put too much sugar in it, you'll get a flip-flop, where you have all the jitters and none of the focus. And so that's what I did for a while, is just kind of choke down black coffee, and eventually get used to it. Because it's a drug, it's caffeine.
Especially if you didn't drink.
And even, never, And so by my last semester of college, I had sort of found that rhythm of coffee, music, hyper-focus, and was able to sit down and write a lot. I was a philosophy minor, so I also had 500 word essays, be in the library for 5 hours. So I need that coffee, focus.
Which is historically probably the complete opposite of what
you're told.
ADHD should be able to do. Wow, that's phenomenal. So I guess fast forward now, after you've found your superpower.
First semester of graduate school, I among many ADHDers do. I mostly signed up for something that I was unprepared for, which was a half marathon, and you have to train for a half marathon. So I found a training regimen and stuck to that. And by the end of the semester, I had seen all of my cohort, all of my peers, just emotionally break down because grad school.
Extremely.
And I was like, right, and I just remember being like, I don't know what's going on, guys. Like, everything seems to be okay. I mean, that first semester was hard. I hadn't been taking just my coffee in yet, so there were late nights and a lot of study cram sessions. But I was not emotionally exhausted or broken. And I was like, the only thing that's different is I'm training, because I'm running every other day. And so I was like, maybe there's something to this idea of exercise and mental health, and I came to the conclusion that when you're in graduate school for social work or counseling, it seems like every interaction with a professor is a counseling session. And so I was like, well, if I have a pillar of mental health, which I'm constantly getting therapy sessions, a lot of exercise, and I just started dabbling in eating, I guess consciously, and what I'm putting in my body. And if I have those 3 pillars, that'll probably be okay. And maybe I'll be well.
Yeah.
And I brought that to my professors, and they were like, I don't think that's true. And so I was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then I kind of looked through research, tried to find it. There is none. At the time, there was very, very little. Maybe a handful of studies, and at that time, there were probably like 5 to 10 studies.
Wow.
Since like the 70s.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
you would think it would have been more.
No,
Wow.
yeah, even now, I was telling you before we did this, I just finished writing a book for coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Even scouring through the research, it only took me a week to like look through everything.
Yeah.
There was just nothing. There's just nothing there.
Wow.
And so, in 2014, a book called Spark came out by Dr. John Rady, and it's essentially about how exercise impacts all these different mental health diagnoses. And so I devoured that book and was like, vindicated.
Yeah,
this is what's up.
This is my Bible. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so I always knew I wanted to get a certification, open a gym, but that book was sort of the nail on the coffin of this is what I have to do because this, I was right. This is the answer. This is what's. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's how that started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why Lost Boys? Why the name?
So I was working in community mental health. And I was also at a CrossFit gym in town, and I had a really bad day. And so I'm someone that is driven by his convictions, right?
I can tell.
And so I knew that what I was doing in-home community mental health was what I needed to do for this particular client, and the supervisors and the people that are more concerned about the money were telling me no, that I have to do this instead. When I knew what's good for this client, this same day I knew what I needed to do for my training to be mentally well, and to reach my goals. Get an email from the gym saying like, you can't do this anymore because it's making us look bad to our members.
Wow.
And I just remember being feeling depressed for that whole day. I was just depressed. And so, I went to bed early, just feeling completely deflated that these 2 places that I spend all of my time at work and the gym, neither one of them wanted me or was picking up what I was putting down.
Wow.
And so, defeated, I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and hand to God, my first thought was Lost Boys.
I love it.
That these are Lost Boys in Neverland that whose parents didn't want them.
Definitely.
And they had no place, but they had each other.
Wow.
And so I said that's what I'm gonna name my gym when I have a gym.
Wow. I promise you we're one and the same when we talk, because that's kind of how everything Good Counsel came. I woke up January 1st, went to sleep, the night before in December. Didn't know what I was doing. January 1st, everything came to me. So that's really, really good. But again, you've gave numerous stories where just by you pressing forward, this door was open, or you found this crack and you kind of busted it.
Sure. Yeah, I have found continually since then that if you're in constant motion, opportunities will hit you. Wow. You may not find them, but they will hit you. And so you have to keep moving forward.
You got to keep moving. That's amazing. Yeah, I know when my wife first saw your name, Lost Boys, what was the 90s movie? Lost Boys with the vampire and stuff, and she was like, he does Lost Boys. All that stuff. So she's really excited. So I guess now, with Lost Boys and then with your ADHD counseling in the Roanoke Valley, are they 2 separate entities, or are they?
They are 2 separate entities because when I created them, I wasn't licensed yet. And so effectively I couldn't, when you're a resident, you can't practice outside of your location. And so, they're 2 separate entities. I've thought about bridging the 2, but at this point, there's no real need to do that.
I meant to ask, you're also certified as strength conditioning coach
Yeah.
also. So you certified. You got certified in that first.
Yep.
Before, like,
Yes. Long
Yeah.
before I got
Wow.
licensed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now with with your ADHD counseling,
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about that. So that came after once you got licensed, and is there more
No,
tradition?
the practice actually started when I was a resident.
Okay.
So I actually sought out a residency supervisor that had her own private practice and said, what are you doing Friday nights? And she said, nothing. I said, well, can I use your office? I did that. I ran out of her office, and we still have that supervisor resident relationship, and she was present. And the idea was that I wanted to get started in that work, in the ADHD work, and I wasn't going to be licensed for another 2 years, just because of how long everything takes, and then studying for the test and taking the test. And I didn't want to wait. And so that all worked out. I had a private practice, and then 2.5 years later, I got licensed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what does that side of with the ADHD counseling? Is it a traditional kind of talk therapy style session on that side of things?
It is. Until recently, it has been. I always say, my specialty is ADHD. I usually tell everyone, if you have ADHD and depression, and the depression is causing more issues than the ADHD, I know somebody.
Yeah, I know somebody.
That's going to be as good as I am with ADHD. I firmly believe that we all need to stay in our lane, and we need to have a really, really good lane.
Really good lane.
And I do ADHD very, very well.
Wow.
And so, what I tell my parents is the counseling of ADHD counseling in the Roanoke Valley doesn't start until the child is probably in middle school. Okay. And the reason for that is prior to middle school, the ADHDers don't have this narrative of something's wrong with me, I'm broken, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, which were all narratives that I had in my head. Those don't kick on until 10, 11, 12 years old. Prior to all of that, it looks like coaching in a gym would is you have these superpowers, we need to find them, and then let's position you under your yellow sun so this isn't a problem anymore. And then without fail, again, not to disparage the education system, the narratives will begin. Wow. Yeah, and then that's when the counseling starts, and we have to challenge those narratives because they're not true. In the vast majority of cases, ADHD is only a problem because of school. Because you have to fit into this box. Right. Wow. And so there are some cases that's not true, but by and large, we don't have problems at home. Wow. You're absolutely right. Unless there's some other underlying diagnosis. Something. Wow. You're absolutely right. So what are your thoughts on, because I know you talk about exercise being as good as I forgot how you word it, but medication. Sure. At the end of the nature, exercise being a form of medication. Tell me a little bit about that. So for the ADHD specifically, exercise by definition is medicine. When we take stimulant, non-stimulant medication, what that drug is trying to do is it's trying to produce dopamine and norepinephrine in our brains, which help the ADHD or be neurotypical. Wow. And what happens when we exercise is we produce dopamine and norepinephrine. Wow. And so the wonderful thing about exercise is there's no upper limit. So I can give you all the Adderall in the world, and there will be bad things that happen. But you can exercise until you can't anymore, and nothing bad will be tired. But mentally, there will be no adverse side effects. And so for our audience, I always give these guidelines. For the male, they need to hit a heart rate of 90% of their maximum heart rate. So just take 220 minus your age, you got your max. 90% of that, and in males, we produce dopamine and norepinephrine. Females, they need to be at 60%, and they produce dopamine and norepinephrine. And so the window is like 30 to 90 minutes. So I hit a max heart rate. I hit a max heart rate, and I got a 30 to 90 minute window where I'm going to be quote unquote neurotypical. I like to think of it as the door to all of my superpowers are open, and I need to go get them. Wow. And so the fantastic, wonderful thing about exercise is for the chronic exerciser, what actually happens is we produce more regularly dopamine and norepinephrine. So if I exercise and I hit that threshold, it's like we turn on a faucet for 30 to 90 minutes of dopamine.
Wow.
But if I'm the chronic exerciser, the person that's been working out for years,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a faucet that's being turned on. It's more hoses by which we can produce dopamine in our neck.
Wow, yeah.
And so my theory is that for the chronic exerciser, we have these young kids in the classes that I coach. What does their life look like if they're exercising for the next decade by the time they get to high school?
Mm.
Will they have the neurochemical tools to cope and be neurotypical just on their own?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Wow.
I would think yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really, really phenomenal. You really have painted a different picture, and I hope the listeners are really tuning in, because a lot of parents deal with their kids and ADHD is the buzzword now.
Right.
They're passing it out like candy. ADHD here, ADHD there. So even, do you work with adults with ADHD?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So for them, that's the counseling.
Yeah.
It is years, sometimes decades of a narrative of I am broken, I am dumb. And ADHDers, we tend to have a narrative of explaining away our achievements while still focusing on our hang-ups. And so we can have David Newman, the owner of JetBlue, millionaire.
Yeah.
When he sold or took JetBlue public, he made like $1 billion, with a phone call.
Yeah.
And the man that is the ADHD, the real ADHD expert, Dr. Ned Hollowell, who's written literally all the books on ADHD, called him and was like, "Congratulations, they had worked together as a physician client, and you've done great work. Congratulations." And he said, "I'm a billionaire, but I still feel like that kid who just bottomed out on the SAT."
Wow.
And it's like, by all markers, the SAT just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, they have since done tests that say like it's not indicative of success at all. Let alone someone that has made $1 billion company. But that is so, unfortunately, so common for all of our adult ADHDers that we just fixate on that thing. And so that's what we're doing in therapy. More often than not, my adults have figured out how to cope, and it's those narratives that we have to unpack.
Wow. So in your coaching side, what does a coaching session look like for you? I know we're here.
Sure.
I don't know if you want to point out some things or whatnot. Does anything or
So
are they different for everybody?
Yeah, it's really different for everyone. Since COVID-19 hit, since we reopened phase 2, we've been doing a lot more one-on-ones, obviously. And I have a lot of parents that would have rather have their kids double up. So they're coming in here, we're lifting, we're working out, and then we might have a 30-minute session afterwards.
Yeah.
So we might work out for 45 and talk for 30. And the way that works out is they're coming twice a week, sometimes once a week, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a week. And so I'm getting more contact with them than I would in a 1-hour session. The other thing too is after you work out, you're a little bit more verbose. You're a little bit more talkative, chatty. You feel good. And so I, especially the teenage clients, you get a lot more out of them after the workout. So I've been doing a lot of that, and that just looks, counseling aside, that looks exactly like what coaching looks like. What are your goals? What do you want? I have some kids that play a high school sport, and so it's like I need to be ready for that sport if it returns. And some of them are like, even if it doesn't return, I'm 16, I want to be jacked. So it's like, all right, that's fine.
Wow.
And so my goal across the board with all of the kids that come in here is to have a total grasp on the fact that exercise is medicine, and it needs to be part of their lifestyle.
Wow.
The greatest compliment that I could ever get is I have a client that leaves and goes to college and gets their syllabus and says, "This is my weekly schedule. When am I going to work out?" Okay, it's right here. And then I know they're good. So it looks different for everybody.
But it's still a traditional workout. Like we used to do in football, 3 sets of 10 and stuff,
Yeah,
or whatever they do.
Yeah, whatever it is that they need, we're giving them.
Maxing out on some things ever?
Depends on their experience.
You're gonna get me in here now. Really
Depends on their experience and their needs.
But just like in regular traditional counseling, you meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, because the idea too behind the coaching is for, I would maybe say 90% of all the clients that I've seen, this is their first experience in a gym.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember your first experience in a gym. I remember mine.
Yeah.
And it's like, luckily it worked out, but it wasn't like, hey, come on in, buddy. It was like, don't talk to me. You're in my way. Are you done with you're done with that machine? Get out of here, kid.
That's it.
You don't want that to be that relationship. So you want them to leave and go into another gym and like have all the confidence, like I know what I'm doing.
You know what I'm doing. Especially when you walk into a gym for that first time, it's an opportunity that you're gonna see where you're weak at.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same place where you see where you're weak at, that's where you become strong.
Right.
In those places, and that can be intimidating for a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
So how do parents or adults get in contact with you if they wanted to start a session? Are you currently offering sessions now?
One-to-ones we still are. We have limited space that they can shoot me an email at either business. The easiest to remember is Gabriel at Roanoke.ADHD.com, and let me know that that's what they want to do. And either I'll coach them. I have another coach that works in the gym. She's also a mental health professional. I made sure that whoever I brought on, I wanted to be in our field because so often I found that a lot of parents were coming to me with kids with special needs, ADHD, they're on the spectrum, they're depressed, they're anxious, and the coaches, through no fault of their own, have no capacity to handle that. And so it was becoming an issue of like, I don't know what to do with your child, so you guys can't be in the class anymore, like you can't be here anymore. And obviously that's not okay, but we also, talking about staying in your lane, we don't want them trying to do what they should be doing. And so I knew that when I brought on a coach, I wanted that coach to also be a mental professional, to have some scope of what's going on with these kids and these adults. And so, they'll work out with me, or they'll be coached by me, or the coach on staff on.
Like I said, I think we're one and the same with a lot of the things. Just because it's almost like I hear myself talking with some of the things that I'm hoping to do, and that's great advice. Just keep moving forward, because in the future you're going to run into something that you want to do. So one thing that we always ask, within every Tim Talk is what are your number one, what would you tell someone who's nervous about going to therapy or trying any kind of therapy for the first time?
So what I always tell them, especially people that I coach, is you come to the gym because you're not where you want to be. You come to the gym because you want to be better. That's what therapy is. We have this stupid stigma of I can go to the gym because I'm not as jacked, fit, lean, strong as I want to be, but I can't go to therapy for all the same reasons. And so the vast majority of everyone does some sort of exercise. They are trying to improve some aspect of themselves. It's the same thing. It's just in a different setting. It's in a more comfortable setting.
Most definitely. No, I absolutely love it. I love the idea of everything. And then the other common question we always ask here at Tim Talks is, what do you hope for the future of your practice and of mental health in general? Sure.
For my practice, I would love to bridge these even more. And right now, I'm really trying to figure out this these dueling fields. How can I actually have a session while working out and afterwards? What is the best way to do that? There is no rule book. Yeah. Yes.
That's the piece that I'm researching now.
Yeah, absolutely. That is sort of a joke, but not really, because people need this. Dorothy already said it's medicine.
It's medicine.
And so, like I said, there's no rule book, there's no guidelines, there's no blueprint for any of this stuff. So unfortunately, I'm having to make it up on my own. And so I would love to already know how to do it, but I don't yet. And I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do it. Ultimately, people are still moving forward, and my deficiencies just dictate how fast they're moving forward.
No, I absolutely love it. But as in, the indicative of your story so far, you're gonna figure it out.
Sure.
You're eventually gonna bust the door open. You're gonna open up the world for people like myself, who's kind of seeing some ways that I want to make a mix. You'll be able to write that blueprint for us. I really, really appreciate you. Anything you want to leave everyone with?
I don't think so. If they have any questions, they can email me for counseling, coaching for themselves or their child.
Sounds good. Well, you guys, this was Tim Talks with Gabriel Villarreal, LPC, owner of Lost Boys Strength and Conditioning, as well as ADHD counseling in the Roanoke Valley. He also was one of the early on Good Counsel members through Good Counsel. So you can also find him at wearegoodcounsel.com /healing if you want to get connected to him that way. And we can walk you through the process and you can get connected to a therapy concierge who will also get you connected to him. His email and website is flashing at the bottom. If you guys have any questions, be sure to hit him up. Again, this is Tim Talks. Peace.